Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil
Recording in
Alameen.
progress.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. رضي الله تعالى عنه وسرد التابعين وعلماء أملين وآئمة أربعين مجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين وبعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Alright, so today we'll be getting into what breaks the wudu. As we've been going over, we talked about the sunnah of wudu, the last class, the fara'id of wudu as well, those things that are obligatory. And we also, now we're talking about the things that breaks the wudu, makes the wudu invalid, which means that if you do any of these things, you have to redo your wudu again, right? And wudu is so serious that Imam al-Akhdari, he mentions in his Mukhtasar that a person who intentionally prays prays without wudu has committed an act of disbelief, right? Because wudu is a prerequisite, tahara, purity, is a prerequisite. If anybody denies the obligation of performing wudu before salat, if you're in the state where it requires you to make wudu, then this person intentionally does so. This is what the Sheikh is talking about. Now, so the things that causes wudu to be broken. So there's two things you have to understand with regards to being obligated or being obligated to make wudu. It falls under the category of what is known as hadith. Okay, hadith, Hadath, hadith, right? And you have hadith, which is ritually impure. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sidi Abdullah. Right, called ritual impurity. Okay, things that cause you to be naturally impure. Do any of you guys, or even the people online, know what naturally causes you to become impure, where you're required to make wudu? We're gonna go over it, but I just get an idea if you got to feel and understand.
Urination.
Say it again.
Urination.
Right, if a person urinates, the act in itself, and it puts you in a state of ritual impurity because you don't really have no control over it. You have to go to the bathroom. Menstruation, exactly. You have to. These things have to. They happen in your body, natural occurrence, without doing anything. Okay. Urinating. Now, defecation, exactly. So these things put you in that state. And then once you're in that state, then you're required to make wudu. Okay? Barakallahu feekum. May Allah Ta'ala reward all you guys. So it causes you to be in that state where you have to make wudu. Because it's something that just happens, naturally to you, right? Now, you have asbab or sabab, those things that causes you to make wudu, right? And then we're going to talk about all of those things that causes you to make wudu just as well. Well, you know what? Let me go back and correct that with where you mentioned menstruation. Menstruation causes a person to requires them to make ghusl. Right, it's major. So you have the categories. There's two types of hadith. Right? Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Malika. There's two categories to hadith. You have hadith kabir, right? And then you have hadith saghir. Okay? Hadith kabir is major impurities. Okay? Meaning the major acts that require you to make ghusl. This is really what hadith kabir is signifying. It requires you to make ghusl. Right? Khati, you getting notes? Okay, alhamdulillah. It requires you to make ghusl. Okay? Hadath the kabir, what falls under that category? Intercourse, sexual intercourse, right? And what is defined as sexual intercourse? When the two private parts meet each other, okay? That's considered intercourse, right? Duration, the length of the length of active intimacy doesn't matter. It's when the two private parts meet each other. That's what is considered intercourse, and it requires ghusl, right? The emission of sexual discharge by means of wet dream or etc., right? If you have a wet dream, that requires you to make ghusl. You wouldn't make wudu, you'll make ghusl, right? We're kind of jumping the gun a little bit because after the section of wudu, ghusl is the next one, right? But I'll just go ahead and throw that out there so maybe we don't really have to double back, right? The completion of menstruation, right? When a woman completes her menses, okay? It requires her to make ghusl, right? You can't make wudu, okay? Now, and then some, there's mention even when one becomes Muslim. After you become Muslim, you take Shahada, you're required to make ghusl, right? Now, so as far as the Hadath al-Saghir, which we were just discussing, the urination, right? Urination, defecation, passing wind, right? Anything that leaks from the private areas, pretty much, it requires you a Hadath al-Saghir, right? And we're going to get into it. And then you have those things that are called sabab. So we're going to discuss this now in detail. So if you're taking notes, once again, you have hadath, right? Hadath, hadath, right? Which means ritual impurity, meaning you're impure beyond your control, okay? And hadath is split into two categories. Hadath al-Kabir. Kabir is spelled K-A-B-I-R. And that requires you to make ghusl. Okay? Hadath al-Saghir requires you to make wudu. And this is what we're going to be discussing today. And then you have those things that are called sabab or asbab. Okay? Which mean those things that causes you to make wudu, where you have to make wudu. All right, and we're going to discuss that right now. So, call it mu'alif rahimahullah ta'ala. What breaks wudu? Things that break wudu are in two parts, right? We already discussed it. We already mentioned it. Ahdath is the plural for hadath. Okay, ahdath is the plural for hadath, and then you have asbab, which is the plural for sabab. Okay, which means the causes, the thing that causes you to make wudu. So, question, everyone, even type in the chat box and you guys that are sitting here in front of me. What is hadath? What is hadath? Impurity beyond your control. Okay. Now, ritual impurity. And what is hadath saghir? Hadath saghir. Good. Ritual impurity. What is hadath saghir? Now, minor ritual impurities, or we could say the ritual impurity that causes you where you have to make wudu, where wudu is required, right? Because hadath al-kabir requires you to do what? Now, good. Requires wudu. Hadath al-Kabir requires what? Qati. What is it? What does it require you to do? Make what? No, not wudu. Remember, we said hadath al-Sagir requires you to make wudu. So hadath al-Kabir requires you to do what? Make ghusl. Right. Barakallahu feekum. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so you guys are getting this. So he says, as for the ahdath, and of course he's referring to the saghir, which requires you to make wudu. He says, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Shanice. He says, as for the ritual impurities, there are 5. Okay? So you want to put this in your notes. As far as the ahdath, they are 5. The first one, he says 3 of them are from the penis or urethra, really, and 2 are from the anus. Okay? Number 1, urination. Okay? Urination. That's the first one. The second one is prosthetic fluid. Okay? Prosthetic fluid is more famously known as premature ejaculation, right? Or in slang terms like pre-cum, right? Where a person, they dribble on themselves, right? Now, there is an actual adab on how to purify oneself from that for the males. Okay? If one has a premature ejaculation before he makes the wudu, right? He has to not only just remove the impurity, right? Meaning washing, if it's on his thobe or in his underwear, he will wash that off. But he has to wash the entire shaft, the entire penis, right? He doesn't just wash just the area, but he has to wash off the entire penis, right? So if one has premature ejaculation, he has to wash the entire penis. That's the behavior, how you do it. You can also find this discussed in the Muwatta Imam Malik under purification. So he has to wash the entire, and there's no other reason other than the Prophet ﷺ told him. So, had said this for us, right? And inshallah, after class, somebody remind me, I'll post that narration. I'll look for it and post it, in the groups. And the other one is semen, the discharge of semen. But when you're talking about discharge of semen, it's not sexually provoked. Okay? It's not sexually provoked. Discharge of semen that's sexually provoked will be due to intercourse, right? Where the discharge of semen comes out, whether male or female, it'll be intercourse, through wet dream, or through a person masturbating, right? Sexually provoked discharge. Sexually provoked discharge. However, non-sexual or involuntary is meaning it's not done by any of those methods that I mentioned. It could be from a sickness. Alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, ustad. It could be from a sickness, right? Or it could be from they mentioned like a scorpion sting, and there's other animal. They say the sting is so like brutal, it can make you discharge, right? And that's not a good feeling either. So, so it can happen. It can happen by means of this. So it's non-sexually provoked discharge. Okay, that's the 3. So once again, prosthetic fluid, right? Or premature ejaculation is also known as, or referred to as, the discharge of semen unsexually provoked, right? And I gotta remember to put that in the parentheses on the second edition when I come out with the revised edition of Umdat'l Bayaan. And urination, when you go to the bathroom and urinate. The other 2 are from the anus, is due to defecation or feces and passing wind. All right, those are your 5 ahdath al-saghir. Those are that 5 that requires you to make wudu. Okay. Now, as far as the sabab, the causes, They are, let me see, I think they're 10 in number. As far as the causes, those things that cause you to be in a state of impurity. Yeah, 9 and 10. Okay. So the first one of them is sleep. Sleep, right? The causes of ritual impurity for our number one is sleep. Okay. Now sleep has a ruling, right? And I'm going to mention those rulings. Okay. So if you want, you can put hukm, the judgment with regards to sleep, in your notes. The first one is a long, heavy sleep. It breaks your wudu. Okay? How does a person determine whether his sleep is heavy or whether it's light? Is by what? Anybody know? If you call a person's name more than once. Alright? Because if a person's awake, your normal state when you're awake, unless you literally didn't hear you, the normal state of calling someone is Alaikum salam rahmatullahi barakatuh talib. Right? Is usually you say the person's name or you just begin to talk to the person responds, right? So a long heavy sleep is determined by if you call a person's name more than once. If you have to call their name more than once, and we're talking about a person who's closing, exactly, basically they're closing their eyes, and you're like, yo, shake, yo, oh. If they do that and respond like that, then the person has to make wudu. All right? The second ruling is a short, heavy sleep breaks wudu as well. And they say the time, if you want to give a guesstimated time of between long and short, the estimated time is like more than 15 minutes, basically. About 20 minutes. We'll say 20 minutes to be on the safe side, right? They're about 20 minutes in long, heavy sleep, okay? I mean, short, anything under 20 minutes is considered short. Anything 20 minutes and over is considered long sleep, right? And determination of heavy is by what? Right, or speaking to the person and the person don't respond. You have to call them more than once. The third ruling is a short, light sleep, right? And what's the length of time for considered short? Anything under what? Anything under 20 minutes, correct. So under 20 minutes, that's right, barakallahu feek. Anything under 20 minutes is considered short, right? And light, what do you think a light sleep is determined by? If the heavy sleep is determined by doing what? Saying the person's name, right? And they respond to you. If you have to call them more than once, then it's considered a what kind of sleep? Heavy sleep, right? So if we consider heavy sleep, then what do you think a light sleep is? Basically, if they answered. If they answered. Huh? Right, they respond to your calling. So that's considered a light sleep. So you go to, you got your eyes closed. It's under 20 minutes. Assalamu alaikum. Like salam, right? That's a light sleep. And that does not require, it doesn't break wudu. So you're not required to make wudu. The fourth one is a long light sleep. Right? A long light sleep. And long is determined by what? I know I keep asking y'all these questions, but you have to know these rules, because if you do one of these things, and this is my way of knowing that I'm doing my job is conveying the information to you properly. Anything over 20 minutes, right? 20 minutes and above. So it's a light sleep, and the light is you respond. Although you respond, it's a long rest. What do you think the judgment is? It's not mandatory, but you're encouraged. It's recommended for you to make wudu, right? Because why? Now, the Hanafis have a slightly different approach. One of their determining factors is that the person is sitting upright, right? Now, suppose you were in a light sleep, that you were sitting upright, and you're in a long sleep, and they call the Iqamah, and it's 30 minutes. You hear the Iqamah, you jump up, you've been like off about 30 minutes. All right? Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And the person, you know, is paying attention to it. Might be your Sahaba or somebody. The thing that someone naturally do is say what? Yo, I make wudu, inshallah. You know, you was kind of, you know, you was a little knocked out there, right? It's recommended because people will make objection to you. They'll make objection to you. Although it may not be a thing that's mandatory, but it's recommended out of edeb because there's a certain edeb, an etiquette that you have when you approach the salah, right? So you might have had a long light sleep laying down. Hanafis would be like, you know, come on, Sheikh, you ain't gonna get up and make wudu, right? Will they be wrong to encourage you? Absolutely not. Nah. People only deny heavy sleep, so that they don't have to make wudu. Yeah, that is true. And exactly, you're only denying it, you know, so you don't have to make wudu. Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Abdullah. You know, you'll get up. You know, that is really the only reason why. It's because you don't want to make another wudu, right? But it's not gonna kill you. It's fresh, you know, act of ibadah, you know. So you'll get up and make wudu. Sheikh Abdullah, if you know, for those who are on Zoom, he typed in the chat. He basically like, I'm that Hanafi, you know, that'll wake you up. Like, come on, Sheikh, you gotta get this wudu, right? You know. But anyway, so those are the hukm, the ahkam, the ruling for sleep. Okay? Now we'll move on. The next thing that's amongst the causes of sabab is the loss of intelligence through, you know, temporary insanity. So when a person, you know, goes majnoon, he goes crazy, right? And of course you're talking about somebody that has an altered mental status, okay? You have an altered mental status, a person that has an altered mental, reconnected now. Okay, we back connected now. All right, so a person can lose sanity for the moment. You know, like I said, an altered mental status. The third is fainting, right? If a person passes out, well, for whatever reason, exhaustion, etc., etc., if a person passes out, the person who lost his temporary sanity, the person who faints, they're required to make wudu. These are sabab, these are causes, right? These are causes that cause you to be in a state where you cause you to have to make wudu. Okay? The fourth thing is intoxication. Right? Now, Muslims shouldn't be getting intoxicated. That's his bottom line. Secondly, there are methods a person will get intoxicated by something that is permissible, but by too much of its consumption, it's made you intoxicated. Too much milk or too much sugar, right? It can intoxicate you. You know, it could be a medication, like a prescribed medication. I'm not talking about, you know, street drugs. You know, these things cause you to be in a state where you have to make wudu. All right. Wudu is also broken by number 5, apostasy. Right? You can commit kufr. You can take yourself out of Islam. The fastest way, how does one, this is an Aqidah question, of course, but it's related to fiqh. How does one apostate from Islam? What are the method? What's the method of apostasy? You can do apostasy by doing what? By number 1, by a verbal pronouncement or something, a statement of kufr. Like, you have to be careful. Some of the statements, speech, right? The statements that you know, when I mean we say, meaning Americans, that is statements of kufr. Like, the big guy upstairs. These are statements of kufr, right? No matter how much it makes you giggle and laugh, these are statements of kufr. We should not, making that, taking that as an ideology, or repeating these statements. Where I be around, when you be around a lot of foreigners, sometimes you can tell when they mix with the non-Muslims, they always say, Jesus Christ, right? That's a statement of kufr, right? But you have to be careful, and and these be Muslims I'm talking about. Hey, Jesus Christ, you be like, yo, all right, yeah. Oh, brother, I didn't mean it like that, And you live in an era of extreme sensitivity. A person to make a statement of kufr, and be like, and treat you like you the one that made the statement of kufr. You're like, yo, I was kufr. Man, y'all brothers go with all this extra stuff. No, that's your deen, not mine. But okay, that's what you want to do, right? Apostasy. Apostasy is also enacted by having a belief, i'tiqad, a belief, right? Believing something, that something is haram when it's halal, or believing something that something is halal when it's haram, when the thing in itself is actually haram. Okay, so that, and also actions. Okay, a person, no matter how much I love my mother, me and her is not gonna go to church together, and she come to Juma on Friday. We can't do that. All right. These type of things. So those three things has to be a statement, an action, and also a belief. Right. That puts has a person with a apostate, meaning that they left Islam. Okay. So apostasy, when you come back to Islam, then you will make wudu. And one of the ways of, like, the Prophet ﷺ real eloquently corrected one of the believers, where he said, by means of a hadith, he said, do not question things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And question, and constantly question to the point. I'm saying I put that on. Oh yeah, that's a custom. That's a oath, by saying on God, or on, I swear on my dead homie, or my dead mother, or my I swear on the homies and things of that nature. Yeah, you were absolutely right. The Prophet ﷺ had mentioned about questioning. He said, to the point where you'll question, well, who created Allah? He said, if one says this, you say, Amentu billah. Right? Amentu billah. Then he said, Thumma istaqam. And then after that, be upright. Amenta billah is saying, I believe in Allah. Right? So you reaffirm. You're reaffirming, your belief. And this was, this was displayed because you're questioning it, right? So a person making no shahada. Now, I forgot which one of the theologians it was that mentioned this, but some mention that if you make a statement of apostasy, it's sufficient enough for you to make wudu and return to prayer, because you'll say this shahada in the tashahhud. Okay, fine, well and fine. I agree with this, right? But one kind of like threw the curveball and said, well, according to the Malikis, the tashahhud is not wajib. Now, first of all, this ain't that kind of Amal Ahlul Medina. We teach the Amal Ahlul Medina, right? So you're going to recite the tashahhud. It's part of the prayer. When it comes to giving the hukm, the judgment, it'll fall under the category of sunan, versus other madhahibs is wajib, right? And so some people say, well, you guys say that it's not mandatory to say the tashahhud, so it's only sunan and you can leave it out and the salat will still be valid. Anyone who tells you that has not learned the way of Imam Malik. right? If a person deliberately leaves out the tashahhud and he doesn't make, because the hukm, it has a hukm, and we're going to discuss this, but the prayer will be invalid. Bottom line. The only way he can rectify that is by making what is known as the sajdatul sahu, where you make the sajdas of correction, when you correct the prayer. We're going to have a whole discussion on that, inshallah, right? However, so they say that no, you should, utter the shahada and reaffirm your iman, right? So, because it's not wajib, right? However, if you make a statement of kufr, the only way to correct that is by proclaiming iman, the opposite. Now, okay, alhamdulillah. So anyway, so to proceed on, having doubt about you being in a state of hadath, except a person with a constant problem of emission. Okay, so I'm gonna qualify that just a little bit. So let's deal with the first thing. Having doubt concerning hadath. Okay, and what did we say hadath was? What was the 5 ways? The 5 ways of hadath is divided into 2 ways of exiting. What are the 2 ways of exiting? From the Sunnah doesn't mean exactly. From the front and the back, right? From the front and the back, to be fair, because the same hukm applies to women, but sometimes the author usually write it generally, and it's also a linguistic thing. So if any of you guys are part of that, that whole new no gender role thing, sorry, this Islam doesn't support that, right? If you think that it's chauvinistic to use the pronouns of huwa instead of hiya, huwa means he instead of she, Islam ain't in favor of that. For those people who studied some bit of Arabic grammar, or sarf, I should say, if there was 2 women, right? Tell everything, but ask your grandmother what she need. All right. What was I about to say? I got distracted. Man, I just got distracted. Oh, okay. So we was talking about doubt, a person having doubt. Now, about ahdath. So if you're a person, let's say you're having doubt, and he's talking about ahdath, so whether you went to the bathroom or passed gas or not, right? Or, pre-ejaculated or discharge of semen, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, back to the little fun fact or fun question here. Fun question / fact. The 2 women, right? If there was 2 women and one man, what type of pronoun would you use? Would you use a masculine pronoun or a feminine pronoun? For those who study sarf. If you study sarf, right. Shukran, barakallahu feekum. If you study sarf, where you're conjugating words, word conjugation in Arabic, it'd be masculine, absolutely. Regardless whether there's 1,000 women, one man turns the entire wordplay to masculinity. All right. So therefore, we don't play into that stuff. Don't let that Western outside influence start to influence you where you think funny in your deen. We've been watching it for years. It's been going on for extremely long time. Right. Yo, you guys sit up, inshallah. Sit up, y'all. These things, they've been playing in their effect. Don't let the feminists hear you. Yeah, I know, right? You have to tap her because she's in that heavy sleep right there. Right? Oh, okay. Then you should have answered the first time. But anyway, so we can't let that outside stuff influence it. So when you're making reference, and sometimes you may even be reading the books, because you're going to be encouraged to read the books, and especially sisters. That's the other thing too, sisters. This sincere advice. I was mentioning this earlier to someone. Women are the most are played upon and preyed on individuals for agenda. And the reason why I say that is you're manipulated because you throw you in a category. They already tack at your confidence. So, you know, a lot of women, they suffer from inferiority complexes, right? They're not saying that men don't as well. But someone will use that and manipulate that, right? Most Muslims, I'm talking Muslims in America, they only read books that have the word woman attached to it. The only books that they read that don't have the woman attached to it is usually marriage books, right? Or the Quran, if they read the Quran. But most women, the only thing that they usually concern themselves with is all the time, Imam, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam to wa barakatuh. Imam, I ain't been practicing my deen like I supposed to lately. You know, what's a good woman's book that you recommend for me, right? And then when you ever read, and I read these books, you know, I go through them. A lot of them a lot of things they would do is almost, if you read them, the writings of these particular books, they're almost, it's like they're trying to convince you that, you know, Islam is for women, right? It's almost like they convince you that Islam is for women. And then they turn around, the same women and some of the same authors of these books convince you that Islam is not for you by telling you polygyny is not fair. Right? Then you gotta like look at these things with open eyes. They may have Muslim names, but some people write, and not all Muslims are good Muslims. Some people write books. They be theses for school. They get graded, test papers. They're writing, you know, for the kuffar, and the writings that they're writing is for the audience. And then what happens with us is then we have this heavy, you know, gun battle of man versus female. And we already know our society is built on male versus female. So then when it comes Islamically, you're like, yo, you know what? I need to get a good book. What you think it'd be? And 9 times out of 10, advice from my Muslim sister, over here walking through the gates of the doors for my new Muslim sister. That's like, them things almost like platinum hits. It's like Michael Jackson Thriller album. You're like going double diamond or something like that, right? It'd be the same old books. Then you'll have women, they don't learn anything else other than that, or they won't go to class unless it's a sister's class. If the class, this is the thing, from the Minhaj of Sheikh Uthman and Fodio, to God Rahmati. He says that women have an obligation of learning. Right? They have an obligation of learning. Meaning learning their fard ayn. They have to learn. This knowledge that we're teaching, you have to learn this. Because if you don't know it, you're sinful. And this knowledge has to be provided for you. If you're a married woman, you usually learn it from your husband. If your husband doesn't know it, he has to go out to learn it and bring it back to his family. If he doesn't have that type of time, hey, that was one of my favorite books too, though, Sheikh. Anyway, if he doesn't have the time to teach the fard ayn, then he makes it accessible or make it easy for her to attend lessons where she learns what's obligated upon her. Anything outside of that, where you'll find, and what's amazing is this, you'll find, and I'm speaking from as an imam. What's amazing to me in this time is that men will prohibit their wives from attending circles of knowledge or going to the masajid, right? But the wife and a woman, and she'll be obedient in this, but most of our women go outside to the marketplace without permission and without a mahram. This is amazing. If you flabbergasted. And then and so sometimes, you know, usually when a person wants to end a marriage, they find things that they want to, they have identifying factors on what it is they're going to end the marriage on. So, like, for instance, most common thing when most men want to get divorced is usually, my wife is disobedient. I've been warning her. I'm not saying it's not a valid excuse, but there's certain things. Most women, when they're ready to get a divorce, right? You married them with no job. you knew he didn't have a job, and you told him it was okay he didn't have a job, and then he stayed in the marriage and he still didn't have a job, as long as then the moment he gets another wife without that same job, now all of a sudden you want to leave him because he can't take care of you, but you've been with him all these years with all these children and all that stuff, and now, okay, I'm ready to be out, right? But because you'll maintain and stay in there. I love him. I'll stick with him through thick and thin. But the moment he get another wife, he's out of here, right? Or he may be a person that make the provision for you, but you knew when you married him, he was very ignorant of Islam. That should have been a disqualifying factor. Or maybe, the same way that people put, stipulation of $5,000 dowry, $500,000, whatever. Maybe the stipulation should have been, bro, I'll even get engaged to you, but you have to do, you have to sit down and learn. There's a practice that I adapted mentally from the practice of Africans. Africans have a real smooth way of how they deal with you, right? Especially when you're trying to marry one of their women folk, right? If you're trying to marry into their tribe, right, you have to attend madrasa before you can marry my sister. Or you have to attend madrasa. That's like one of the stipulations. Like, what's madrasa? You have to sit down with the sheikh and you have to learn, right? Why is that? I'm ensuring the safety and that my sister or whoever the woman folk that I'm in charge of will be well maintained. Not even so much so as money, because he can have a good job and lose his job, lose, go on disability, whatever the case is. But one thing you can't lose, right? And I mean this metaphorically. One thing you can't do is you shouldn't be losing your Islam. If you lose your Islam, the marriage is null and void. You lose your job, you're still married. Right? You gotta go seek out a khula. You become a non-Muslim, your marriage is null and void. Right? So, women have to learn this. And so women, you have to initiate it. Don't wait until you get married, right, to learn what you're supposed to learn, right? And I'm not telling you to rebel against your husband. That's not what I'm telling you. So don't, misconstrue my words. People twist that and say, yo, Imam Khalil said this. I'm not telling you that. But you have an obligation to learn whether you have a husband or not, right? You are ummah within yourself. Most women usually have their children until they remarry. While you have them children, what are you going to prepare for them other than just food? Food and making sure they got nice clothes so that they can go to school on the first day. A lot of us invest more in the secular education, the investment in the mind state and the thought process, investing more in our children on what school they'll attend, what neighborhood we'll move in, what's the tax, the taxes, because the school taxes are paid this. They run all that down, but when it comes to Quran, children don't even know how to recite Fatiha. Children be 13, 14 years old, mukallaf, and don't know how to pray, right? So we have to take more, care to get into this. So anyway, so having doubt with regards to ritual impurity, that's how we started talking about women and everything else, because we talk about the genderless movement. Ritual impurity, whether it's from the urethra or from the anus, right? If it comes out of you, whether it be by discharge, urine, and so on and so forth, and you have doubt. Now, the doubt goes two ways, okay? You may have used the bathroom, okay? But you're in doubt on whether or not you made wudu after you used the bathroom. If your certainty is stronger than half, then you have to, if it's half or less, then you have to make wudu. Okay? Now, if you knew that you broke your wudu, right, by using the bathroom or so on and so forth, and you were, use the one downstairs, you were certain that you made wudu, and your certainty is stronger than your doubt, then you would avoid having to remake wudu. All right. So he said, except now the exception is a person with a constant emission problem, usually, and he's gonna give another ruling with that towards the end of this end of this section, inshallah. We're gonna do one more part, and then we're gonna talk about touching the private parts, and then we'll stop there. And next week we'll discuss about touching the opposite sex. So the only exception to the rule about doubting is the person that has an emission problem, like, you know, he may have an incontinence problem. That's really person, you know, when he utilized the bathroom, he may dribble on himself. You know, it's beyond his control. It's beyond his control, and usually it's associated with some sort of sickness of some sort. All right. Bada boom, bada boom, boom, boom. Okay, number 7. For the male, particularly, touching the private parts. Okay. Now there is a hukum for women too. Excuse me. Touching the private parts. For some, touching the hand, the bare hand, touching the penis wouldn't break wudu for some. It's all a matter of what they intended by doing it, right? And if I'm not mistaken, Sheikh Abdullah, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the Hanafis, if I'm not mistaken, right? However, and it's based on hadith. It's all based on hadith, right? The conflict is based on hadith, whether it breaks wudu or whether it don't break wudu, right? However, the problem is it's all about the application. What's your minhaj, your methodology, right? So within our methodology, it breaks the wudu. However, it says if the palm, this is what the Amal Ahl Medina and the Shaykh points out. If the palm or the inner parts of the fingers, even if it's one finger, touches the penis, then it breaks wudu. Right? The palm or the inner part of the hand, basically any inner part of the hand, touches it, it breaks wudu. However, if it's on the backside or if you got a covering over your hand, then it doesn't break wudu. Right? So if a person is maybe adjusting his underwear or scratching himself, but, you know, he's doing it like with his stove, you know, his hand on his stove, it doesn't break wudu. Okay? Shafi's also, okay, mashallah. Now, next class I'll mention is now, as far as the woman, it has a hukum, but it's not exactly quite the same because our private parts are different. For the woman, if she inserts her hand inside of herself, then it breaks wudu. All right? So insert her hand inside of herself, it breaks wudu. For the male, if his palm touches it, or finger, he said even if it's just one finger, the inner part of the hand, then it breaks wudu. Now, so we'll stop here, inshallah. Next week we'll do a recap, and we'll finish points 8 and 9 on what causes or what breaks wudu, inshallah. Any comments or questions pertaining to what we covered today? If not, the Shafi'i same as the Malikis. Let me see. Are there gray areas for apostasy? Right? If I say green smoothies provide health benefits, can that be considered as apostasy? Lie. When you're talking about those things, actually, it's a whole nother discussion. But no, that doesn't make apostasy, because the person understands that the provider of the nutrients is also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you don't have to specify that. It's all in context with conversation, conversation. Inshallah, hopefully that answered. Oh yeah. That's just the answer as well. Inshallah. Okay, barakallahu fikum. So I guess that with that, inshallah, we'll close out. So I'll see you guys next week, inshallah. I believe now I'm gonna start doing class about 2 o'clock every Sunday, inshallah. 2 o'clock every Sunday. because, you know, I have some other things I got to take care of, you know, throughout the day. Today I was a little late. You know, my children had to go get haircuts for school and stuff like that, so I was a little late getting back. But I did intend on starting at 2 o'clock. So inshallah, we'll probably do it 2 o'clock every week, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت واستغفرك واتوب اليك. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله تعالى وبركاته.